Hello, everybody! I am Wonder from Wonder and Widget's Workshop, and today I've got a story for you. This is the story of how I accidentally started a whole campaign. It's not going to be a very long story, but I hope it's an enjoyable one. Our story begins towards the beginning of 2020. I had just finished writing a one-shot in which the players investigate the murder of a merchant in a smallish town. The players would initially be led to believe that it was a vampire who had killed this merchant, and would slowly over time, through their investigative work, find that actually the real culprit was someone a little bit more mortal. So, I had just finished writing the one-shot. I was feeling pretty good about myself. I figured that by sometime around mid-March, we'd be able to actually run this one-shot, and myself and my players would all be able to have a jolly good time. And then the lockdown happened. Due to a variety of other life circumstances happening around the same time, and our general unfamiliarity with running D&D online at the time, we ended up not really being able to get together again and actually run it, or really run any kind of D&D for that matter. Fast forward a few months later, and I get contacted by a friend of mine from college who also happens to stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/tablab. You can check him out, link is in the description. So he contacts me and offers me the opportunity to set up some D&D one-shots on his Discord server. Now, I have been starved of D&D at this point. I hadn't played for a whole 2 months, and for an addict like me, that's like a whole year. So, I pounced on this opportunity. He sends me an invite to his Discord server. We work together to scout out some prospective players for this one-shot, and we run it. And everyone has a good time. I offered to run more one-shots in the future, and everyone happily agreed to participate as players. At the time, none of us had any thoughts about actually turning it into a campaign. I didn't really know what I was doing when it came to running things online, but even so, I was undeterred. I set up the next one-shot, which, in keeping with the theme of the previous one-shot of having some kind of vampiric influence, which was about a vampire-worshipping cult that had taken over a small town. 2 of the players from that first one-shot had returned to continue being players, and they brought those same characters from that first one-shot, which only strengthened the sort of thematic vampire thing going on, as their characters were essentially themed around having a bit of a vendetta against vampires. Now, when the players rolled up to this town, they didn't know that they were going to be fighting against another vampire-themed foe. In this case, a real one instead of an imagined one. And that was part of the fun of it. It was also part of the reason that instead of lasting 1 session, this ended up being a 3-session long one-shot. We all had a blast over these 3 sessions, and the players got to explore their characters quite a bit. So, it was only natural that all of us were kinda leaning towards turning this into a campaign as opposed to leaving it a series of disconnected one-shots. Even so, there were a few other players who had interest in being players, and there weren't really enough DMs to actually run anything for them. So, while we figured out an arrangement that everyone could have an opportunity to play, we figured we would keep it more or less as a series of one-shots for now. Thankfully, we were able to figure out an arrangement pretty quickly. For this final one-shot, which took place over the course of 2 sessions, the player count expanded to a total of 6, which was quite the mess, as I didn't really know what I was doing as an online DM at the time, and, well, they were alright, I guess. It was my first attempt at doing an online dungeon crawl, and for many of the players, it was their first time actually playing, so a lot of things didn't really end up going as smoothly as I had hoped. But, even so, everyone had a good time, and afterwards, plans were finally arranged with myself and another DM to essentially split this series of somewhat disconnected one-shots into two separate concurrent campaigns that were happening in the same universe at the same time. The story of that campaign is one for another time, and for now, the story of this campaign is basically wrapped up. But the important thing for the purposes of the campaign that I was running, and still am running, is that we finally got a name for the party. The Barley Boys. Even now, almost a year after that initial series of events had happened, the campaign is still ongoing, and it's going pretty well. There are more details to the Barley Boys campaign that I would be willing to talk about in future Storytime episodes, but for now, I think that covers the basic gist of how I accidentally started a campaign. That is all for this video, and I will see you guys next time!